go either way, but in the meantime, while there are so many Americans waiting for relief, Republicans are going to control the Senate. I do think there is a significant appetite in Congress, to Chuck's point, to do something, to get a big sweeping piece of legislation, but the president's unpredictability is just an incredible X factor.
Casey, don't the Senate runoffs here, if you're Mitch McConnell, you don't want to suddenly have more gridlock in the midst of what is going to turn into this national fight for control of the Senate in 2 months, down in one state that, oh, by the way, is moving against the Republicans. If you're Mitch McConnell, you want to make COVID relief not an issue.
The incentives are lined up to do something for this.
And I think also you're going to see, we have been told there are going to be some important cabinet changes. The Pentagon, the defense secretary may be fired or resign before he can be fired. That is our reporting, as well as possible executive orders. There's a lot on the intelligence front. There's a lot that President Trump can do in the next 2 months.
How much could President-elect Biden, reach across the aisle, olive branch? How much will the left of his party allow him to build a bridge?
I think in the interim that he has free running. I want to say one other thing quickly about Kamala Harris. She identified as a young woman of mixed background as black. She went to an historically black college. This is an enormously important moment for Howard University and all the other historically black colleges, for AKA, for the black sororities. There is a cultural phenomenon now in the White House that we have never seen before, that's high profile at the highest levels of government, and that is going to be felt. Just think of the example, the role modeling for black women, black girls, black men and boys.
I've talked to Dr. Frederick
America.
Of Howard University about this very
Exactly.
thing.
I remember that interview when we the press.
This is just so important. It means so much to Howard. It means so much to these institutions, and this just could be such an interesting moment for these institutions to really thrive in this generation, with Kamala Harris as sort of this North Star.
And there's been a lot of fear in the black community over the last 4 years, and this, I think, provides some hope, Kamala Harris's role.
Let's go to Kristen Welker, who, of course, is at Biden headquarters this morning. Kristen, we should get you in on this conversation, the question of what kind of governing agenda Biden will feel he has. We've made the observation that at the moment the election stands for Joe Biden being elected president and Republicans gaining seats in the House and the Senate in suspended animation. Will it end up being controlled by Republicans or Democrats? How does that dynamic affect what Joe Biden wants to do and who he chooses for his cabinet, for his Secretary of State, for his Secretary of Defense, and so on?
Well, he certainly isn't going to be able to choose people who will be flashpoints, given what our understanding of the makeup of Congress and the Senate will be. Savannah, you're absolutely right about that. When you think about his agenda, though, let's tick through some of the key things that he wants to accomplish. He's talked about criminal justice reform, addressing the protests and the core issues of those protesters, barring chokeholds, for example, for police officers. He's talked about building on Obamacare. Now, that gets very complicated because, remember, the Supreme Court is going to hear a case about Obamacare, could potentially overturn it. He's talked about rebuilding Obamacare. This is one of the questions I asked him during the debate. What do you do if it gets tossed out? How do you rebuild that when your plan really focuses on starting from where we are right now? So that could be a real challenge, and he's going to have to work with Congress on that. And then think about his climate change plan. This is a $2 trillion plan. He says it's going to bring thousands of jobs. It's going to add to the U.S. economy. He says it's a jobs plan. That's how he's selling this. But if you are Republicans, if you're concerned about running up the deficit, it's going to be very hard to get them on board. And then, of course, what we've been seeing in recent weeks on Capitol Hill, the fact that they are stalled over COVID relief, that they haven't been able to get COVID relief through, despite the fact that so many Americans feel as though they are struggling right now economically. They want their kids to get back to school. He's going to have to tackle all of this. Now, we know that he and Senator Harris had a briefing on the economy and on COVID earlier this week. He's made the point that while this race was not called, he was going to get to work because he was so confident that ultimately he would be named president-elect. But all of these different agenda items that I lay out are very tough to get through a divided Congress.
Sorry, Kristen, let me jump in here.